on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Kamen Rider Saber review. This time we're going to be talking about episode number 32, and I do apologize for this being a decently late upload. I usually do try to get my uploads around 12 o'clock Pacific time, but there was a lot of construction going on right outside my house, and normally when that happens I'm able to ignore it, and usually with my Yeti mic my voice is able to essentially overpower the construction so you barely hear it in my reviews, but this particular case, the construction was literally happening like right next door, so it would have sounded absolutely awful if I had released the video that way. So I even did a whole test recording, like I did a full-on review recording with the noise, and unfortunately it was just too much and it was unwatchable. So, you know, I wanted to wait till the construction was over before finally starting my review, so that's what I did, and now it is finally going to be up, which I'm happy about. So here is my review for Kamen Rider Saber episode 32. Let's get this review started and break it down. So gotta talk about the beginning of that episode, because oh my god, we get Master Logos, who is able to shoot a CGI arrow all the way from the South Pole to the North Pole, and this CGI arrow is so powerful it breaks down the barrier that keeps the North base safe from all the other riders from the South base. But unfortunately, with the barrier now gone, the riders are now exposed to the Sword of Logos. We get Sophia, who sneaks in back in order to try to restore the power, but unfortunately it's too late, and already some of our villains have already infiltrated the North base. This includes, of course, we get the two Kamen Rider siblings, Sabila and Durandal. I keep forgetting how his Kamen Rider name is pronounced. I want to say it's Durandal, but I could be wrong, honestly, so I apologize if I am butchering that name. But anyways, we get the two of them, and we get Yuri and Toma, who are left to try and fend them off, and the fight between them is pretty cool, and I'll get a little more into that later on. But we also got Rintaro and Ogami going after Zuos, who has also infiltrated the North base, but we also have Storios on top of that with the key that May lost in the previous episode, and he's using that for his own selfish desires to find something within the North base. One thing I did find that was really bizarre in this episode is that Sophia doesn't mention the key once in the entire episode. But you'd think if the villains were breaking in, that would be something you'd want to double check to make sure you had at your possession, that either you or May had, which at this point neither of them have. So I don't know, I expected at least one on-screen explanation or one on-screen conversation between May and Sophia of them kind of revealing that May no longer has the key, but that ends up never happening throughout the episode. We cut back to the fight though with Toma and Yuri with the two sibling Kamen Riders, and Toma eventually does learn that Kamen Rider Durandal does have a very specific technique when it comes to his teleportation, that is not necessarily just simply teleporting behind the other Kamen Rider, that it's more of he's able to create kind of a fake clone for a brief moment while he sneaks behind the fight and attacks. At least that's how I think they were trying to visualize it. It's really hard to say for sure how his powers work, but we see Toma trying to finally get an understanding for it, and we see that in his eyes in this image that I'm showing you here, which I thought was kind of a cool visual cue to show that he's catching up on it. And then we cut to Sophia and May, who are hiding when Rintaro comes to try to protect them, because unfortunately Tetsudo is unable to protect him to his full abilities due to the fact that he's currently unable to transform. He is still able to wield his sword though, so I'm wondering what kind of damage his sword would be able to do without transforming into a Kamen Rider, if it still has any power on its own. We don't really get to see it in action, so that answer never really gets told to us, but we also see him wielding the sword that Kento used before he became Kamen Rider Caliber. So I am kind of wondering, like, does it have to be Kento that uses that power-up? There was a brief moment where he even hands it to Mei, and I thought, ooh, could this finally be when Mei becomes a Kamen Rider? But we end up not really seeing that play out, unfortunately. My fingers were crossed, though, during that scene. Like, I was really hoping, oh my gosh, Kamen Rider Mei, please, but unfortunately, we don't actually get to see that play out. My fingers are still crossed for that, because I think at this point, she deserves to be a Kamen Rider, for sure. So Zuos eventually catches up to our heroes, and we then get to see that Sophia actually can hold her own pretty well. Like, she uses some magic to try to hold him off. It doesn't work for too long, but, you know, it holds him off for a brief amount of time while she tries to give the others time to escape. Time that they don't use, because immediately afterwards Rintaro comes to the rescue and takes on Zuos one more time, and we then cut back to the fight with Toma and Yuri, and we see Toma has kind of figured out Durandal. Sorry, I keep hesitating with saying his name because I just know I'm saying it wrong. But Durandal, Kamen Rider, he ends up taking him on, and this time learning his technique, but we don't really get an answer as to who is going to win this fight, because unfortunately the fight is then interrupted by Master Logos, who tells him not to finish the fight, rather to retreat back to the South Pole base, so he does. And we then cut back to Rintaro, who unlocks a new form, kind of undeservedly, kind of. I'll get a little more into that at the end of the episode. And I do really like this new outfit, you know, it something about it, you know, it reminds me, maybe it's kind of the angelic feel to it, but it really reminds me of like the Super Saiyan God form, not in color or even in like the way he fights with it, but just with how like angelic it looks. I guess that's probably why it reminds me of that. But then we get probably the worst part about the episode, and it's not the episode's fault per se, it's actually my fault. So this is where my review is going to be extremely unfair. I'm going to point that out right now and say that everything I don't like about the episode from here on out is actually my fault and not the episode's fault. You see, I usually watch these episodes on Facebook because there's a specific group that I follow that ends up uploading these episodes in absolute beautiful crisp quality. And unfortunately, that same group has recently kind of been uploading those episodes late, and so therefore I'm unable to watch them in order to have my reviews out on time. So recently I've been going to Kiss Asian in order to get the footage that I, you know, use in my corners here, and also to watch the episodes in general. And because of this, the quality is not quite as good as it used to be. It's why for a lot of the thumbnails, if you'll notice that a lot of the images look really blurry on the thumbnails, is because literally the images I extract them from when I'm creating the thumbnails for each episode comes from the footage that I recorded from Kiss Asian. So all that to say, this fight, which was totally fast-paced CGI, all of it at the end, I couldn't see a single thing that was going on. It looked like a complete mess, and it made my enjoyment of the episode kind of dissipate because I couldn't see a goddamn thing. So, you know, it sucks because I didn't like it, but I don't know if it was the episode's fault, because maybe if I saw this fight in HD, it would have looked a lot better, maybe. Definitely let me know in the comments below how this fight looks in HD, because I saw it in absolute garbage quality, and it looked absolutely like garbage because of it. So it was the least enjoyable part of the entire episode, and that was my phone. I will I forgot to silence it, so I apologize. If those of you who are wondering what that ringtone was, that was my girlfriend, and I believe it was from the game Animal Crossing. That's what I have as her ringtone. Anyways, moving on from the really bad fight, Rintaro does eventually beat Zuos, but we then get like a really cute moment where he gets a vision of his previous master congratulating him, which, you know, is really cool, and especially because this is a big deal for Rintaro, because, you know, he finally avenged his master, the man that, you know, he destroyed the man that actually killed his master years ago. So, you know, really good moment for him. Good for him, definitely. But then we get one more scene showing that, and you would have thought I would have learned the first time to silence my phone, but no. Let me silence that real quick. Cool. Now it has been silenced. So we find out that he actually has a new book that came from the North Pole base. We don't know quite what this book is, but we know that him having a hold of it is probably not a good thing. So overall, this episode, you know, it wasn't my favorite, and no, not just because of the ending fight, but it was just okay. And it was a mostly action-packed episode, which I mostly liked a lot of the fight scenes that we got here until the very end for the specific reasons that I gave you. But for the most part, though, it was a very enjoyable episode. My biggest gripe with it is Rintaro's power-up, the way he got it in this episode. It kind of felt out of nowhere, and I say that because I feel like the previous episode would have been the perfect time to give him these powers that we end up seeing him utilize within this episode. I feel like yesterday's episode was much more of a Rintaro focused episode, and if there was any moment to really develop his character and give him that power up that we see him use in this episode, last week's episode would have been the one to do it in. But this week it really just felt kind of rushed, and it's like, I don't know, it didn't sit right with me, if that makes sense. But, you know, I thought everything else about this episode was okay. Nothing amazing that stood out, but it was just a fun, action-packed episode, and it's okay to have those every once in a while. But you know what, guys, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know what you guys thought of the episode in the comments below. Also, let me know if that fight is any better in HD, because again, just looked like absolute garbage on my end for the most part. But yeah, definitely hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But guys, above all, of course, always remember to keep it A+.